As a husband, I am entitled to the entire inheritance. In a marriage, it's my inalienable right. I might purchase a mansion. The mother-in-law and husband have a severe financial obsession. They even attempt to take credit for my father's wealth, so it's not just me. Why should I give these folks the fortune my father amassed? I'll never be able to forgive them or give in to their demands. My name is Mia. I'm a 44-year-old in my 20th year of marriage. I juggle housework and my job, living a busy life. My husband, John, 2 years my senior at 46, works at a supermarket near the station. We met when I was a university student and working part-time at the supermarket where he worked. We started dating somewhat casually and got married when I was 24. We live with our son, Bill, who just started university this spring. I have a fulfilling job that keeps me busy, but there's one thing that troubles me. It's my husband's reckless spending. It's our right to spend our earned money however we want, but he's relentless in asking for more when it runs out. It's worse when all three of us are together. Mia, I ran out of pocket money for this month, so put about $200 in my wallet. He demands additional pocket money every month. Again, it shouldn't be that little. What are you spending it all on? Shut up. A man has various social obligations. My husband raises his voice immediately if I show the slightest resistance. It's all because you insisted on sending Bill to college in the first place. That's right, Mia. It's enough to just graduate high school like John. What are you thinking? You don't want Bill to end up like John because you graduated from college yourself. The mother-in-law corners me with her sarcasm. That's because Bill has a goal to become a lawyer. You agreed to it too, didn't you? I didn't think it would cost so much money. Then the father-in-law says, Mia, you could just have your father pay for all of it. He lives in such a big house. He wouldn't hesitate to spend on his dear grandson's college fees. I thought, isn't he your dear grandson too? But I kept quiet, knowing it was pointless to argue. It's always like this when it comes to money. I'm really glad Bill wasn't home at this time. He doesn't think highly of his grandparents either. He makes sure to go out whenever he knows they're coming. It's always the same. My husband and his parents know my father runs a company and lives in a large house, so they try to get money from me. Then one day, while preparing dinner, Bill told me something shocking. Mom, Dad's cheating. I saw him. He was walking into a hotel arm in arm with a woman. I never thought I would hear such a report from my son. I felt more disgusted than angry, realizing I probably didn't love him anymore. Just get a divorce, Mom. I can work part-time. It's very reassuring to know my son feels the same way. Thank you, Bill, but I'll talk to your father first. You don't have to worry about anything if we do get divorced. I'm working too. On the night I thought about confronting him about this, suddenly, my husband came home with his parents. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, what brings you here all of a sudden? Then the husband and his parents barged into the living room. I thought I'd do something nice for my parents, like taking them on a trip to Hawaii. It's a bit much, but could you prepare about $5,000? Again, a demand for money, and this time a large amount. The in-laws were grinning at me. Where would I get that kind of money? If you don't have it, ask your father. It's unfair that your parents live in a big house, and we're in a rental apartment. He came up with some nonsensical argument. I was fed up and said, speaking of which, you're cheating, aren't you? My husband and his parents froze. I thought it would be better to have them hear it too, so I decided to confront him as planned. I don't know what you're talking about. Why would I cheat? Do you have any proof? He was clearly flustered. Someone saw you entering a hotel looking cozy with another woman. Anyone could say that. Bring this person who saw it, he demanded. I hesitated, not wanting my anger to be directed at Bill. Mia, even if that's true, forgive a cheat or two. It's normal for men. You're his wife. You don't need to make a fuss. I wasn't making a fuss, and I couldn't believe my mother-in-law, a woman herself, was condoning cheating. More importantly, hurry up with the money for the Hawaii trip. Yeah, we've already made the reservations, added the father-in-law. That's right, Mia, I'm counting on you. My husband always tries to change the subject when things don't go his way. I couldn't stand these people anymore. We're getting a divorce, I said calmly. What are you talking about? Don't decide that on your own. If you really want a divorce, I'll take your parents' mansion as property division. While we were arguing, my cell phone rang. It was from my uncle. He's my father's brother with whom I often drink together. Is that you, Mia? Your father suddenly lost consciousness and collapsed. He's been taken to the hospital by ambulance. I don't know his condition yet, but can you come quickly? I answered without hesitation. I explained the situation to my husband and his parents and hurried to the hospital. Uncle, how's Dad? For now, he's asleep. He's not in immediate danger, but his condition isn't great. I was somewhat relieved, fearing the worst. My father is 67, so it wouldn't be strange for something to happen at his age. My father took over the company from my grandfather and worked tirelessly. Now he leads a comfortable life, but it was tough at the beginning, to the point where we almost had to sell the big house my grandfather built. My father worked hard to turn things around. My mother passed away from an illness when I was in middle school, but my father never remarried and raised me by himself. My father is irreplaceable to me. It seemed like he wouldn't wake up today, so after talking with my uncle for a bit, I went home. A few days later, I got a call that my father had woken up, and Bill and I went to visit him. Hey, Mia, Bill, sorry to worry you. He seemed more energetic than I thought, which was a relief. Bill, how's college going? Yeah, college is fun, and I'm studying hard. My father was happy to see Bill, but when Bill stepped out, he said, Mia, if something happens to me, I've left everything about the company to my subordinates, so you don't have to worry. As for the house, I interrupted my father. Dad, don't talk nonsense. Just get better soon. You don't need to worry about anything right now. Yeah, you're right, my father replied with a sad but gentle smile. Afterward, the doctor called me, and it seemed my father's condition was quite serious. Years of overwork had taken their toll. On the way back, I couldn't stop crying. A few days later, my father passed away. That night, I cried until my eyelids swelled. During that time, Bill was my only support, staying by my side the whole time. However, as an only child, there were things I had to do. I started preparing for the funeral, trying to switch gears. The funeral was held at my family home, and many people came to offer condolences. I was reminded of how great my father was. I was too busy with arrangements to grieve. Bill helped as much as he could, even though he didn't understand everything. But my husband just played with his phone, doing nothing. With the help of relatives and my father's colleagues, we managed to get through the funeral. As we were cleaning up, my in-laws hurried over. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, thank you for today, I greeted them. My mother-in-law said, Mia, that's not important. What a splendid house. As always, she seemed impressed by the size of my family home. I was speechless due to our vastly different emotions. Mia, is it true this house would sell for $3 million? Another insensitive question from my father-in-law. I evaded the question. I don't know, it's not my house. Then my mother-in-law quickly added, you don't have any siblings, right, Maya? Yes, what about it? I answered sternly. Oh, nothing, just checking. After that, they left, satisfied with my husband. After all the memorial services were over, I finally had a moment to breathe. While I was putting away the funeral clothes at home, my husband said, "My parents are coming over now." What? Why are they coming? I was depressed, thinking it was about money again. Why are they coming? They're my parents. We'll talk about it when they get here, so wait a little longer. A few minutes later, my in-laws arrived, grinning. They sat on the sofa. Then my husband said, "Hey, Mia, when are we moving? If it's just the three of us in such a big house, it's a waste. My parents will live with us after we move." What are you talking about all of a sudden? We're getting divorced. I was busy with my father's affairs, but my intention to divorce hadn't changed. Oh, come on. That topic again. I was wrong before, got a bit angry, but I'm not cheating, and I don't want a divorce. Don't joke around. I raised my voice. Now, you two, spouses share everything, so it's not good to monopolize. My father-in-law smirked and said something nonsensical. A wife should listen to her husband. You're planning to keep all the inheritance for yourself. I'll take it all. It's my right as a husband. If you don't like living together, Mia, you can just give us the inheritance. Maybe we'll buy a mansion. My husband and his parents seemed to think all the inheritance was theirs. What a ridiculous family. My patience had long been exceeded by the audacity of these people, thinking they could inherit the house filled with precious memories of my father and the wealth he had worked so hard to accumulate. I want a room that's spacious and gets plenty of sunlight. I'd prefer a room close to the toilet. There are plenty of toilets in such a big house. Despite my glaring at them in anger, they were discussing these outrageous things. I vowed never to let them have their way. A few days later, I got a call from my uncle. "It's been tough, Mia." "You did well," my uncle consoled me. "There's something I need to talk to you about. Can you spare some time?" I agreed to meet him that night. "Uncle, what's up?" "What did you want to talk about?" "There's something I absolutely have to tell you, Maya." I was shocked by what he told me. I couldn't believe it had come to this. Then I told him everything about what my husband and in-laws were saying. What? They said that? Ridiculous people. Unforgivable. My uncle was furious. I definitely don't want to let them have their way, but it seems okay from what you said. Uncle, what should I do? How can I make them give up? Don't worry about anything, Mia. Leave it all to me. Actually, there's more. Hearing another piece of news from my uncle, I was even more astonished. Uncle, can we meet again tomorrow? I want Bill to hear this too. He's not a child anymore, and this will be a good learning experience for him. I decided to proceed with a plan with my uncle and Bill. The next day, I took Bill to meet with my uncle to discuss our strategy. For Bill, it was about his father and grandparents. I was worried about how he would truly feel, but it was an unnecessary concern. That's an amazing story. I'm getting excited. I don't care about people who see Mom and Grandpa only as money. Please help us, Uncle. Bill was excited to participate in the plan, so we decided to move forward with it. The next day, I called my in-laws to our house and spoke with them, my husband and Bill, 6 of us in total, about living in my family home. Were you serious? Of course, finally you're on board. I've been waiting immediately. My mother-in-law said, the sooner the better. Living in such a mansion is like a dream. Then my father-in-law added, after all, we had to pay the cancellation fee for that trip we talked about before. You have to reimburse us for that. They had made the reservation themselves. I was appalled at their selfishness. Then my mother-in-law said, we'll make back the money soon enough. Don't rush. I was used to it and knew it wouldn't happen, so I could ignore it. But Bill, unaccustomed to their blatant money grabbing, seemed to be trembling with anger. I patted Bill's shoulder to calm him down. Okay, let's do it. There's a lot to prepare for the movie. So mother-in-law and father-in-law, please let us know when you've decided on the moving date. John, you move on the same day. Bill and I will go ahead to get the house ready. I get why you're going, but why, Bill? G's question was unusually sharp. Can you prepare meals and do laundry? Bill is still a student. You can manage just for yourself, right? Yeah, I guess. I managed to deflect with a plausible reason. However, John said, you can do the tidying in the daytime. Why move ahead? You're not planning to take the best rooms for yourselves, are you? You know that house best. He was resisting over trivial matters. It's fine. That mansion has over 10 rooms, right, Maya? Mother-in-law was in a good mood the entire time, thinking they could live in the mansion, unknowingly pushing the conversation in a direction that worked in my favor. I can't do any tidying up during the day because of work. We'll do it slowly at night and on days off. Don't worry, you can choose your room first. Really? All right, then that's settled. I managed to deflect the situation in my mind. I thought, just wait and see. I'll bring you down to the bottom soon. A month later, the moving day was set, and I received a message from my husband. The day of the final showdown was decided, and I was excited. On that day, my husband and in-laws arrived at my family home with a moving truck. Bill and I were waiting in front of the entrance. As my husband got out of the car, he said, "Hey, kept you waiting, huh? Huh, so this is my house from today. I've really made it." Ignoring my husband's poor joke, I looked at my in-laws who were sparkling with excitement, not realizing they were about to turn back. Then the gate opened, and my uncle came out of the house. My uncle stood there, arms crossed, silent. Who are you? What are you doing in someone else's house? My husband apparently didn't even remember my uncle, whom he had met at the funeral. This is my uncle, my father's brother. You met him at the funeral, remember? Oh yeah, that time, my husband awkwardly muttered something like a thanks, but his voice trailed off. So what are you doing here? He asked hesitantly, while my in-laws looked puzzled. Then my uncle said, "This isn't my house. Is there a problem with me being in my own house?" My uncle spoke assertively from the beginning, overwhelming my husband and in-laws. It seems you have a lot of misunderstandings. I've heard the story from Mia. The inheritance from my father was divided between my brother and me. My brother got the company, and I got the house. But I had already left home and was living elsewhere with my family. I didn't plan to move back since my brother was running the company. He continued living here, so he lived here, but the house was in my name. In other words, just because my brother passed away, it doesn't mean the house belongs to Mia. They didn't seem to fully understand my uncle's words. Mia, what's this about? Aren't we moving in here today? My husband asked calmly, as if he had moved past anger. I won't let that happen. You and your family have always been after my father's money, demanding absurd things like living in the mansion or paying for vacations, even after my father passed away. Why should people like you who haven't put in any effort get what my father worked so hard for? You're incredibly brazen. I raised my voice, which took my husband and in-laws aback. But my husband said, "What? How dare you speak to me like that?" Then suddenly, Bill intervened. "Dad, you're cheating, right? I was the one who told Mom." "Bill, what nonsense are you spouting?" My husband couldn't hide his shock at being confronted by his son. "I saw it, Dad." Entering a hotel, looking cozy with a woman. "Are you sure it was me? It's a serious mistake if you're wrong." My husband still wouldn't admit it. Dad, just stop it. Leave Mom and us. Disappear from our lives. The words from his son seemed to hit him hard. But my in-laws' obsession with money was relentless. We don't know what the truth is, but if you want a divorce, go ahead. But we'll need a proper property division. We gave up our apartment and even quit our jobs to relax in that mansion today. Then my mother-in-law added, "That's right, John quit his job too. We have nowhere to live or work now. It's too convenient for you to just send us back. We'll make sure we get what we're owed." I was astounded. Huh? You quit your jobs, both of you? Why would you quit your jobs just because you're moving houses? Are you stupid? Now I clearly see how much you were counting on my father's inheritance. You're the ones being too presumptuous. The hopelessness of my husband's and his parents' actions far exceeded my expectations. Either way, as his child, I'm supposed to inherit this estate. I'll be expecting a hefty property division. That's when my uncle stepped in again. Listening to you talk one absurd thing after another, I can't believe how you come up with such ideas. There's no point in having a rational conversation with you. To put it bluntly, I'm a lawyer. So what? How does that relate to anything? Don't you get it? The divorce will go through, and you'll be the one paying the property division. My husband and his parents still didn't seem to grasp it. It's true that just Phil witnessing your affair isn't enough evidence, but a month ago, Mia hired me as a lawyer to investigate your infidelity. My husband's face gradually turned pale. In the past month, you've met with a part-time worker at your workplace. Let's call her Mrs. A, 5 times about once a week, always at the same hotel. I know about the allowance Mia gives you. It's not enough, right? That's why you were always asking for more. What are you basing this on? Do you have any evidence? I'm saying this because I have evidence. I have several photos. Shall I mention Mrs. A's name here? My husband had no choice but to admit it. You're having an affair. That's an undeniable fact. You won't get a penny from Mia, and you'll have to pay the damages instead. Finally, my husband and his parents seem to understand the situation. From now on, please handle everything through a lawyer and never show your faces to me again, I said firmly. My husband glared at me for a moment, but then looked away, and they all left the way they had come. Thank you, Uncle. No problem. I was more motivated than usual since they were bad-mouthing my brother. Once this is settled, I'm going back to my family. Mia, Bill, you live in this house. It's what your father and grandfather would have wanted. It's a shame for such a nice house to be empty. Okay, I'm happy to live here, I answered with a smile. Honestly, I had hoped for this outcome. Not just living in a mansion, but being able to live in a house full of memories with my father. Thank you, Uncle. This has been a great learning experience for the future. Good job, Bill. Investigating your own parents' affair is quite an intense work experience. Study hard in college and become a great lawyer. After that, my uncle successfully finalized the divorce. Bill and I began living in the house my father had lived in. It was too big for just the two of us, but I was very happy to be surrounded by memories. Bill seemed to have learned a lot from my uncle and was more committed than ever to his studies to become a lawyer. My husband and his parents ended up living in an old apartment. He struggled to find a new job due to his age and called me once. I need to borrow some money. His tone was different from before, not entitled but pleading. We're estranged. We're strangers now. I don't lend money to strangers. Don't contact me ever again. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. Since then, there's been no contact from my ex-husband. My uncle told me they were getting by with part-time and day jobs. Apparently, his affair partner left him too because he was no longer financially stable. It turned out they never planned to go on the body trip and had borrowed money from somewhere unknown to me. They were planning to use the money to pay back their debts. I don't know who came up with such a scheme. It's irrelevant now, but I'm glad I cut ties with them. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, both physically and mentally. I'm going to work hard at the job I love. My immediate goal is to see Bill graduate from college successfully.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.